When Harry Potter first released in 1997, the book garnered quite some praise with its captivating setting, characters, and overall lore. I remember being in middle school and everyone talking about these books, and within no time at all was already getting a movie adaptation of the first book for release in 2001. Naturally, like any massive property, games were inevitable to release for the franchise, and the GameCube saw 5 games total released for the Wizarding World. With that being said, pick up your wands, shout Revelio, and let's reveal and discuss every Harry Potter game that released on the GameCube. First up is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, published by EA, developed by EA UK, and ported over to the GameCube by Eurocom. Even though this is the second storyline within the Harry Potter franchise, this installment brings fans of the series into the Wizarding World for the first time in the 6th generation. Instead of following the events of the film, the game actually follows the events more closely to the book itself. The game starts with Harry getting picked up by his best friend Ron Weasley as they prepare for their second year at Hogwarts. You'll begin by getting acclimated to the controls and combat a bit, doing chores around the Weasley household, as well as partaking in a de-gnoming minigame where you get to throw gnomes off the property as far as possible. Shortly after, you'll end up in Diagon Alley, in which you will go on a fetch quest of sorts to get all the items you need, prepping for your year at Hogwarts, and does a good job of having you tackle a bit more of the mechanics so that you can get your bearings. From here, the game begins to really take foot as you tackle the Forbidden Forest upon Ron and Harry crashing their vehicle there. Harry Potter is an action-adventure game throughout with some hints of Zelda-style gameplay. You have your controls on the top right HUD where you can do your context-sensitive actions with the A button and assign items and spells to the X and Y buttons. Combat is fairly simple to grasp and it does the job it sets out to do. It's not super intricate, but it is very serviceable. Throughout the game, you will need to complete objectives for that specific day that you're on, which you can check through the Remember All at any time pressing the Z button. Here you can see the list of objectives remaining, assign your items for use in gameplay, and more. You'll go through classes at Hogwarts while gaining new spells and finding treasure chests littered throughout which contain folio cards, all while advancing through the story. You will even be able to fly around with your broomstick later on, which controls quite well and is a fun time. Granted, initially you'll fly through rings, but it's not atrocious like Superman 64's ring flying. Once you've completed your objectives for the day, you can either choose to freely explore Hogwarts or end the day to move on through the story. I do like that you have an option on when to advance through the game. When free roaming around Hogwarts, just note that there may be some silly invisible walls like this segment outside here. As you progress, you'll come across manual save points when you want to stop and take a break. You will also collect Birdie Boss's every flavor beans throughout your journey, which can be used to purchase items from the Weasley brothers. But every time you take damage, Harry will drop 5 beans that will disappear in a few seconds if not recollected. Think Sonic when he loses his rings upon getting hit. This can actually get a bit frustrating, to be honest, in this game. There's also a bit of stealth in the game where you can press up against a wall and peek around corners. It's a nice little addition to the overall mechanics. The presentation in this game is very good, and you can tell there was a lot of care placed into this. The visuals are very vibrant and the game runs at mostly 60 frames a second, minus some frame drops here and there. While the voice cast is different from the film's cast, they do a great job here, and Jeremy Soule provides a score that really fits the Wizarding World. Additionally, there's connectivity with the Game Boy Advance here, where you can download a puzzle game to play on your GBA, or you can unlock a secret room on the GBA version of the game. With the time I put into this one so far, I was actually really hooked and could see why this was a popular release amongst fans back in the day.
Thanks, Harry. Much appreciated. Oh, it was nothing. Anyway, we better get a move on. We don't want Professor Snape catching us out so late. Why don't you try that door?
Next up is Harry Potter Quidditch World Cup, published by EA and developed by EA UK. Quidditch has always been an essential part to the franchise, and in smart fashion, why not make a game entirely built around the fantasy sport? Here, you will begin by tackling Hogwarts, choosing your house, and advancing through the season. The game does a good job of teaching you the mechanics gradually in between matches, like passing, shooting, chasing the golden snitch, bludgeoning, etc. Matches are score-based essentially, as the golden snitch halves need to meet together on the top of the heads-up display. This is done based on how each team is playing regarding their passing, scoring, special tricks, etc. The more a team achieves here, the greater the advantage they will have later on. Once the golden snitch forms, the snitch chase will commence, in which you control the seeker to beat your opponent to getting the snitch, earning you the 150 points and essentially ending the match. The overall gameplay is easy to get into as it has a very arcade style feel to it. You can aim who to pass to while flying around, and holding down the A button will let you pass to a teammate more aggressively, while simply tapping it will be a slower pass. As you approach the goalposts, you can then press or hold the B button to shoot the quaffle while aiming for one of the 3 posts to score in. The game won't let you just shoot at any time either, and rather simplifies it, ensuring you are near the goalpost before you can actually take the shot. If your opponent has the quaffle, you could simply fly up to them and tackle them to take it back, or utilize the bludgeoning technique to try to get the ball back as well. You will also be able to do special moves where you can link special passes together and line up a special shot at the goalpost, or even do a team special shot. This made the game almost feel loosely like NBA Street's Game Breaker shots, and I really like that. When the snitch chase goes down, you'll need to try to stay within the golden path to build up your boost meter. Depending on how many points you scored in the match will determine the boost capacity for this sequence, and there are white magic auras that can be collected to instantly refill some boost. These sequences are definitely well done, and it's honestly what I look forward to the most during a match. Furthermore, even when the odds are stacked against you, you could still have a chance at winning here. Upon completing the Hogwarts mode, the real meat and bones of the game will unlock, the World Cup mode. Here you could choose from one of 9 countries to take through the tournament, and opens up the game to entirely new stadiums to play in across the world. Checking out the various other stadiums really adds to the experience and makes you wish you can explore more outside of the stadiums themselves. Furthermore, there's Game Boy Advance connectivity here where you can not only trade cards between the GameCube and Game Boy Advance version, but with the GBA version, you could do cooperative play in a sense between the two. Although this isn't terribly exciting, as the person using the GBA just plays Quidditch ping pong in a sense to earn you a bludgeoning ability on the GameCube version for the match. Also, this has to be the worst looking GBA option appearance in a GameCube game featuring the functionality. They literally took a PNG file, distorted it, pasted it onto the screen here, and even left a white backdrop to the Game Boy Advance logo. This one looks a little lazy. The game definitely has some great visuals and art direction though, with a smooth 60 frames per second and detailed character models. The audio, on the other hand, is not as strong. The sound effects get the job done, but the announcer can get a tad annoying. The soundtrack does a decent job of accompanying the actual gameplay, but the main menu theme does feel a bit overly dramatic, almost like it doesn't match the aesthetic of the game itself. Despite that though, Quidditch World Cup is very much an enjoyable game from the time I put in, and one that I'd like to play more of. Next up, we go backwards in storyline order with Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, published by EA and developed by Warthog. So essentially a reimagining of the PS1 original game, this installment was not only a way to bring the first book into game form for the 6th gen consoles, but a way to take the engine created from Chamber of Secrets to retell the first film. Sorcerer's Stone starts off by getting Harry prepared for his first year at Hogwarts, getting all the supplies he needs like his wand from Ollivanders, books, etc., all while Hagrid gets Harry up to speed. The storytelling here in the beginning is a bit different from the source material, like how Harry acquires Hedwig isn't quite accurate, so there is a little liberty with the storytelling sequences. Mechanically, Sorcerer's Stone plays very identical to Chamber of Secrets, being that it's the same engine. The controls are mostly the same, minus the trigger actions being swapped. However, I will say the developers at Warthog decided to keep the exact map layout of Hogwarts like that of Chamber of Secrets, which I can understand, but at the same token, makes this feel more like an expansion to that than its own brand new game. It kind of reminded me of how I felt going from Grand Theft Auto 3 to Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories, where it was that same environment, yet different mission aesthetics. On the flip side, there are some improvements, such as no loading times at all when going between rooms of Hogwarts, as well as the invisible walls in the outside courtyard being removed. Combat feels almost identical with assigning spells to the face buttons, while the heads-up display is a little different. The buttons in the top right now showcase when they're being pressed down, and Harry's health is the iconic lightning bolt forehead scar. The Remember All returns here, but I will say the UI in this one feels far more basic than that of Chamber of Secrets. One feature I very much appreciated was that in this installment, you could save your game at any time and load exactly where you last saved. The flying returns in this one as well, but I will say the controls are a little bit more touchy this time around. This one actually reminded me more of Superman 64's Ring Flight for the twitchiness, but still not quite as bad. Another aspect that got irritating really quick was every time you collected a Bertie Bott's Every Flavored Bean, Harry had to announce its flavor, but if you collect multiple at a time, he was constantly cutting himself off to announce the next flavor acquired.
Marmalade.
I'm not quite sure why they did this, especially since the blueprint from Chamber of Secrets was there to not do this. Visually, the game does still retain a very similar art direction to Chamber of Secrets, but does have some differences with lighting and color palette that makes it look a little bit different as well. Enough to make you at least feel like you're playing a different installment. Even though this one has a samey feel to it, there's no denying my enjoyment with it for the most part. Some of the puzzles here were fun to tackle, as were the combat scenarios. Audio does a good job as well, with Jeremy Soule returning to compose music that fits the game, while the voiceover work and sound effects feel on point with the Harry Potter universe. Overall, this is still a fun one, but be warned, the price on this one tends to hover between the $80 to $100 mark, complete in box, making this the most expensive Harry Potter game on the list.
Too slow to catch me. Can't you fly that broom, Potter?
Next up is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, published by EA and developed by EA UK. Building further upon the foundation set with Chamber of Secrets, the developers set out to match the movie's darker tone the series set out to do, while bringing the gameplay that you've come to expect at this point. The game starts off on the Hogwarts Express as Dementors infiltrate their way in and try to consume Harry Potter's soul. In the process, Ron tries to save Harry and get him away from the Dementors, and you'll notice here that the gameplay is a more cinematic style approach than before, allowing for more intense scenes to take part in. Additionally, you will also notice that Harry is no longer the only playable character in this adventure, but rather you could play as Ron and Hermione. This lends to the puzzle solving you'll do as you venture through Hogwarts, allowing you to swap between characters with ease, simply pressing the B button. Each character will also have their own perks to assist with, like Ron's ability to find secret doorways within walls. This time around, Hogwarts Castle has been tweaked from the way it was designed in Chamber of Secrets and Sorcerer's Stone, making it feel a bit more fresh while running around and exploring. The main gripe here though is that each door opened will lead to a screen fading in and out in black, or may result in an actual loading screen, which makes exploring feel a little choppily paced. Combat still resorts to using spells mapped to the face buttons while locking on with the R trigger, but you will get new spells to utilize within combat as you progress. Some foes may even stun your friends by grabbing them, and you'll need to either switch to a character to free them during combat, or try to break free by rotating the analog stick. The combat definitely feels a bit more fleshed out in this installment, although I do wish the lock-on was a bit more snappy and didn't require constantly moving the camera to look directly at an enemy dead on. Also, I really appreciated that you didn't lose any of the Bertie Bott's Every Flavor beans each time you got hit this time around. Much like the previous games, you will complete a set of objectives throughout the day, and once you have completed them all, you can either spend the rest of the time exploring the castle itself, or simply ending the day within the Remember All menu. Another aspect I liked was that when you summon Hedwig to assist with a task, you can now actually control her and fly around. I thought this was a really nice addition from the previous games. GBA functionality returns here, providing players with specific minigames to play for fun if they don't have a copy of Prisoner of Azkaban on the GBA, while also adding an owl Tamagotchi feature in a sense if you have a copy of the GBA version. The game looks more detailed than the series has looked to date by this installment, as the art direction goes for a more realistic, darker tone. That apparently came off at the trade-off of having the frame rate of the previous games of 60 frames per second to 30 frames per second here, with some really choppy UI animations. Despite some performance issues, this is definitely a really enjoyable time from what I played so far.
me down!
Wrapping things up is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, published by EA and developed by EA UK. In this final installment for the GameCube, EA went a different route by making a game that's a co-op action experience, in some ways more akin to their Lord of the Rings Return of the King release that saw success. The game takes off in an explosive manner, far more than the movie of the same name, and as expected, utilizes a bit more liberty with the storytelling here, pulling some aspects from the book. Players will be able to take control of Harry, Hermione, and Ron, venturing through Hogwarts and preparing for the Triwizard Tournament. Combat is relegated to pressing the A button rapidly to jinx and attack enemies, while the B button will allow for specific spells to assist in the scenario at hand. You may need to lift an object with Accio, even though the game butchers this by calling it Axio.
Try summoning it with the Axio charm. Remember, you can summon rewards that are out of reach by casting Axio,
as well as others along the line. You could do co-op moves like one player using Accio to lift up an enemy and the other attacking them while they're suspended in midair, or better yet, can use your special meter together to dish out extra damage on foes for a short duration. As you defeat enemies or even objects in the environment, Birdie Bots' every flavor beans will float around to collect, which you can actually now draw toward you by holding down the Y button. These can be used for purchasing new cards in between missions. Folio cards are both a collectible for Harry Potter fans, seeing still photos of the movie, but more importantly act as perk enhancements in the game. Before starting a mission, you can equip up to 3 cards to increase that character's stats, like Stamina, Jinx, and Accio. I will say, I was excited at the prospect of this one being a co-op experience, so I brought my wife in to co-op this one, especially with her being the Harry Potter aficionado. Unfortunately, what we left it with was feeling like this was a game that had a ton of budget put into the visuals, and the gameplay took the backseat, unfortunately. The controls feel pretty sluggish and downright unresponsive at times. The number of times we would try to co-op using Accio to pull down a bridge and it would register for me and not for her, or vice versa, was pretty irritating. Or this horrendous moment of trying to move these blocks in co-op fashion, but the lock-on and the controls for moving objects just fell off, really led to a lot of frustration. Even the game's frame rate is really erratic, with the menus themselves running sluggish beyond belief. Worse yet, the camera tends to work against you, like starting this level here and having to run against the camera, or even this here where I literally entered an area and took a hit right away without seeing anything on screen. It's a shame. This game looked like it had potential to be a great co-op experience, but after the time we put in, I don't think we'll be returning to this anytime soon. Did I mention that they call Accio Axio? Harry Potter became an absolute cultural phenomenon in what seems like overnight. What started off as a captivating book became a series that is so beloved and spawned countless merchandise over the years, and naturally, games based on the series was inevitable, like I stated earlier. All the games here are really good, even great for the most part, except for the last one that feels quite a bit underwhelming. While Hogwarts Legacy is still the ultimate experience currently when diving into the wizarding world, my wife is proof of that, being that she doesn't even game, yet put over 600 hours into that game on my PS5, getting the Platinum Trophy on 2 separate accounts and completing the game 9 times so far. But the games on display here are very much worth playing for Potter fans. So, have you played any of these? Any that caught your attention? Sound off in the comments below, as I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, for a ton of other GameCube-centric content. I hope you all enjoyed, and happy Halloween, GCG Nation!